Hi there, Megan Thompson here with Megan Thompson Coaching. And if your sensitive child is struggling with following a restful routine for bed, then make sure that you are tuning in, because if your kid or teen is running around the house wired or just totally on screens and won't get off or anything in between, we're going to cover that challenge that you could be having today and how to break out of it systematically. Here at MTC, we have helped hundreds of families break out of the pattern of the meltdown cycle. Meltdown cycle, what is that, right? This is a child who's having daily meltdowns, intense in either positive and or negative energy that leads to a meltdown on a daily basis. And this can be happening every day, multiple times a day, every day just once. Or your child might be shutting down and having outbursts less frequently or not at all. And those shutdowns, those isolation moments can be happening on a daily basis or at least multiple times a week. So when we think about what's developmentally appropriate, obviously for young children, it can be tricky for young kids to fall asleep and to do that regularly. And so what we're looking at is how frequently is this challenge an issue, and then we want to look at the childhood across the lifespan, all the way up through 18, and understanding healthy sleep habits and what is important for you to be highlighting as a parent, and what's typical in child behavior, as well as what's not typical and what needs to be concerning for you as a parent. So you might be ready to rest. It might be 7:30, 8:30, and your child is still running wired like somebody just gave them a Red Bull. And this can be really impactful for you as a parent, right? Especially if you have multiple children, trying to wind down your sensitive child. And this is for children who could be 4, 6, 10, and still struggling to fall asleep. Now, some highly sensitive kids can struggle in more of a reserved way, if you will. Perhaps they're reading up till 10, 11 o'clock at night and then super tired in the morning as a result, or they're on their screens and you can't seem to get them to put it away, or they tend to be sneaking it. So you might get them to turn it in, but then you realize that they went back to go get it while you're sleeping, or to turn it on while you were asleep. And so all of these challenges, falling asleep on time, no matter how your child behaves while they're doing that, is what we're talking about here today. And so when we think about the how difficult this can be for you as a parent, obviously, this can be really tricky. At the end of the day, it is your rest time. You might want a break from parenting and need to spend some time with your spouse or co-parent, and want to have alone time yourself, read your own book, etc. Right? And yet here you are trying to get your 6-year-old to brush their teeth regularly, or to get your younger child to put on their pajamas. Without needing to do it for them or with them. And this can be really a big struggle. And we have parents who are struggling with this, with the hygiene issues, especially for 9, 10, 11-year-olds. I don't need to brush my teeth. I don't need to change into my pajamas, like whatever, leave me alone. I got it. I don't need to go to bed this early. I'm not tired. All of that. Can be quite the struggle, regardless of your sensitive child's age. And I want to name that because if you're parenting a 4-year-old, it can be difficult to think that this will keep on keeping on if you don't turn it around. And it's also important for you to notice that it can. And it is important to take it seriously when a 4-year-old is struggling with bedtime on a regular basis. I mean, daily, multiple times a week, is definitely a concern for parents of sensitive kids. And parents of non-sensitive kids alike. And so it's something that you need to take action on now, especially if that is leading to meltdowns. Obviously, your child needs to slow down, calm down, and be restful enough to actually fall asleep. And that can't be happening if they are this agitated and frustrated and aggravated that they are melting down and losing it because it's not restful to have to go through that whole cycle in order to just pass out at night, right? So we really want to take this seriously and focus on breaking out of that pattern. And so at this point, as a parent, you might be doing all kinds of thinking that you might want to try to turn this around, right? How do I solve this problem? Do I get more strict? Do I tell my child, bedtime, lights out, no ifs, ands, or buts, hand it all in, I'm going to strip your room, so that nothing is enjoyable. And this obviously doesn't typically happen on a one or done experience, right? As a parent, you might be dealing with this and slowly removing toys out of your kid's room till the point where all they've got is blankets and stuffed animals and something to snuggle with, and everything else is removed because it's too much of a distraction, or you're trying to use it as a punishment to make the room boring. And so this can obviously backfire pretty quickly when you're noticing your sensitive child and they're experiencing loss around the time that they're feeling emotional chaos. That can actually add fuel to the fire, and it can feel very difficult for you as a parent to uphold those boundaries regularly, or to believe whether or not that boundary actually makes sense for your kid, because it's likely that they are struggling with that limit. And so we know that strict my way or the highway kind of parenting isn't leading you to a successful relationship with your child, because it doesn't send the message to your kid that they can handle it. What you're doing instead is telling your child that you're in charge, and that they can't be in charge of their own bodies, that they can't handle following directions. They have to wait until mom or dad or a parent lays down the hammer. And, whether that be with voice or threats to remove things. And what happens is one of two things. One, your kid either shuts down and yes ma'ams you to death and then follows through, or more likely it fuels the intensity, and so they start screaming louder, and they struggle really consistently with, and then might escalate in their words or their language. They might start hitting at that point, throwing things around in the room, stomping with the massive disappointment in that moment, or saying things like, "Now you don't love me, you don't hate, you hate me. If you loved me, you would change, you would help me, you would let me get whatever it is that your child's asking to do in that moment, whether it be to play or to be on their screens, or to have more screen time, to read one more story, whatever it is. So obviously we know that strict running the house like a drill sergeant isn't going to work, especially for sensitive kids who have an opinion. And we know many highly sensitive kids can be quite opinionated, and they want their voices to be heard, as children deserve to have their voices heard. And it's also true that children need boundaries and limits to be set in order to have safety and consistency in the home, which builds that trust that mom and parents have got you. And so when we think about the challenge that might pose, right? So if strict, heavy-handed parenting isn't working, there's a clear reason. We've covered that here, right? You're treating your child like they can't handle it, and as a result, they don't. And so that's important for you to understand and to notice that isn't an appropriate approach. So you might be considering the other way around, right? It could be just delaying the issue because one more story, one more show, one more something else. You realize that there's a balance there as a parent. It might be hard to figure out. Am I trying to support my child in avoiding a meltdown and walking on eggshells? Or am I trying to relish any last drop of emotional connection I might be having with my child before they lose it, before I leave the room, before I expect them to take care of their bodies by brushing teeth or putting pajamas on independently, etc. And all of these challenges can be really puzzling as a parent, because at that point, you can really feel like you're walking a tightrope. Which decision do I make? Which one is more appropriate at this point? Do I prioritize my child's actual bedtime and or to prioritize the fact that my kid is calm right now, and we want to kind of keep it that way. So this could be really, really challenging when your child is about to melt down. And it's also true that when your child has the jitterbug experience, we call it frenetic energy here at MTC, basically buzzing like a bee all over the place, and can be really experiencing high positive energy. You as a parent can feel a lot of stress in that moment because then, your child is having a lot of fun, but they're not following through on the expectations, and you're worried about what that crash is going to look like. When it is time to say, we're all done playing, it's time to brush your teeth, let's get it going. That obviously can be really stressful for you as a parent, and you can start to wonder whether or not playing in that moment can be relevant, or engaging with your child in delaying the bedtime is going to be more effective because your kid's having fun. And it's hard to parent a highly sensitive kid stuck in the meltdown cycle, because if they're hitting and kicking and screaming multiple times a day, running away from you or shutting down, the times when your child is experiencing extreme positive energy can feel like the time you might only ever get to see your kid happy and joyful. That level of intensity is going from 0 to 60 can be both negative emotions, as we talk about a lot here on the MTC show, but also related to positive emotions. Okay. And so we want to notice that level of dysregulation is still really important for you to be paying attention to. And it's clear that if your child's dysregulated with positive emotions, it's still important to take stock in. Okay. Because that level of out of control experience is still out of control emotions, whether it's positive or negative. Okay. And so we know, like I said, we know that the cry it out method doesn't work. And it's also true that a total, passive follow the child's lead approach doesn't work either. Because in that moment, you're asking your kid to run the show, and that doesn't create that consistency for your child to follow through. And it's important for you to note for your kiddo as well that there are boundaries, that bedtime makes sense to have, right? We all need to learn that skill over the next many years of our life, and we need to learn and adapt to our own body's awareness of how much is too much time to be awake. And without that self-awareness, it can be really difficult to start to adjust in young adulthood. We've seen working with highly sensitive young adults, and in our career here at MTC, many of the team members have a lot of exposure being mental health therapists to working with highly sensitive young adults as well. And many of them struggle going into college, trying to keep up with the pace of college, or living out on their own, or trying to live out on their own with a job, and perhaps going in and out of parents' house still. And the majority of the issue is related to the sleep cycle for many highly sensitive people. And highly sensitive young adults are not immune to that. And so it's really important for your sensitive kid to build these skills early, because we see so many highly sensitive young adults staying up late and then not being able to show up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to work. And when bright lights bother you and harsh language from a colleague bothers you, that compounds when you don't have enough sleep, when you're not restful, when you don't know how to care for yourself and take that time for yourself to go to bed on time. And this can be really challenging, especially for teenagers. And we see in terms of supporting teenagers and turning off the screens and turning off the FaceTime with the girlfriend or the friends, and being able to turn this to disconnect from friends who might need you in this dynamic can be really important to shift out of early, right? And to practice that intuitive knowing that your body is ready for rest. And so your body's telling you it's time to go to sleep. And that personal experience that a child understands about the body and how their body exhibits sleepiness is really important skill to build early. And so the last thing that I want to speak about related to the challenge that you're having with your sensitive kid falling asleep is sensitive kids who are struggling with fear at bedtime, separating from you, anxiety related to that, as well as worries about monsters in the bed or under in the closet, under the bed, etc. Fears that your child might be having after they read a book that was assigned by the school, and having that come up at bedtime, or worries that they might be expressing to you, and it's sometimes dumping on you right at bedtime and having that delay bedtime. And so when we think about the emotional experience of a sensitive kid who's holding it all in all day and then waiting to explode, that's not a conscious decision of, okay, now is the time for me to lose my gasket, right? There's a boiling over point that you can't necessarily time. And that experience that your sensitive kid is having, that boiling over point, can happen through, please don't leave me. I can't handle being by myself when I'm in the dark. Or it could be, let me tell you all the things that I've been struggling with all day long that I've not had the chance to let out. But all of that creates an impaction for your child on a daily basis. And so it's really important to notice that this also is not a healthy experience for your kiddo. And many parents can hear from pediatricians or even therapists that a child sharing their worries before they go to bed is healthy. It should be encouraged. Should be the time that you finally get with your kid that feels close and connective. And it's really important to understand when your child's stuck in the meltdown cycle that this is actually not an effective way for your child to process their emotions. Right before bed, you want your child to be communicating what they're excited about the next day, or resting, what they feel accomplished at. And that needs to be an experience that your child spontaneously comes to you about. It can't be something that you're trying to convince yourself or convince your kid, which my Freudian slip actually is relevant. Convince yourself that everything's okay if you can get your kid to tell you one thing that happened that was good today, right? To try to negate the negativity. None of that actually is going to move the needle in breaking out of the pattern of the meltdown cycle. And it's really important to notice that the time of day that your child feels capable of sharing their emotions is indicative of how regulated they feel throughout the day. And so if they are not sharing with you throughout the day and waiting until the very last minute when they have to be alone with all these thoughts and they can't, and so they require a parent to be there, and it doesn't matter how long, they have to dump it and share it because they can't hold it in any longer, that's a bursting bubble experience your child is having, and it's a symptom of the meltdown cycle. So it's important for you to observe that whether that plays out for younger children or even older children in imaginary beasts and spirits and scary things that they're worried about, or logical conversations around what their peer relationships are going, and what they're worried about, and how they're fearful of their teachers, or whatever it is, that so and so is mean, etc. All of that being poured out at bedtime is still a really ineffective way for a child to manage their emotional experiences. So we want to take note of that. And so when we think about what works, what helps parents shift out of this pattern, you need to be able to playfully engage with your child. You need to be able to teach them how to manage their emotions throughout the day. We can't tackle bedtime problems at bedtime. It's really important for you to be focusing on how and assessing how your child expresses their emotions all day long, so that bedtime isn't the straw that breaks the camel's back for either of you. Let's face it, as a parent, you're likely to be much less patient at bedtime because it's the end of your day, right? So it's really difficult to expect you as a parent, and I don't do this to my clients, to teach your kids at bedtime. That's the last thing that we would be focusing on if your kid was having bedtime struggles, is trying to help you learn a new skill as a parent while teaching your child at bedtime. It's going to be incredibly difficult to be consistent in that in use of a tactic at bedtime. And so when we think about being able to move out of this meltdown cycle, you need to zoom out. You need to observe how your child's experiencing their entire day. You need to look at what you're expecting your child to do on a daily basis, and what you think that a highly sensitive child can handle and their emotional experiences throughout the day, and how all of these challenges that your child is having, they might not be handling them as well as you think if this is happening at bedtime. And so it's important for you to understand, where are you having your child suck it up? Where are you noticing that your child is telling themselves to suck it up, rather than actually experience and dissipate their emotions and deal with frustration or aggravation in a healthy way throughout the day, so that the bedtime doesn't become this, pressure cooker or ticking time bomb. So that's important. We have to assess the experience. You have to speak with your child playfully. You have to support your child in that. And then your child needs to feel capable throughout the day to solve their problems, to generalize a skill of managing an emotion. We wouldn't expect a child who's struggling at bedtime here at our team, with the clients that we work with, when a parent is having bedtime challenges, we don't expect a child to change their behavior at bedtime right away. Because that shift needs to happen during the day first. Again, same thing. When you're at your most vulnerable as a parent, at the end of the day, you're done, right? I'm not going to expect you, I'm not going to ask you to build new skills at that point. And nor would I be asking a child to do that, because they're tired. They're at the end of their rope, right? There's a lot of vulnerability going on in an emotional experience at night. And so it's hard for a kid to feel like they're capable in fixing the problem at nighttime. So you have to build in capacity for your child to creatively solve their problems in the daytime. That needs to be incredibly important for you as you play and communicate with your child, that you understand them, and you share with them through validation, through playful strategies to change their behavior, etc. And that has to be at a time where both of you have more energy, have more capacity for energy as well. And that's really what shifts the dynamic and breaking out of the pattern of the meltdown cycle, especially when bedtime battles are part of the issue. That's clear and important for many parents. But the same thing goes for teenagers. Teens are checking out on their screens. They're wasting their nights, and I say that in an effective way, because some of the communication that they're having with their friends is like literally just the two of them while on their screens watching a show together, and then they're FaceTiming each other. There's some of that's a virtual connection, and some of that's just virtual existence. And so when we discuss the experience of having a hard time being alone, and having a hard time dealing with settling to sleep, that's one of the challenges that we see parents of highly sensitive teens dealing with. And you have to be able to teach your teen during the daytime to regulate that emotional experience and that ability to be on your own and to feel into your own emotions and to experience them and notice them and decrease them through the day. Without that skill, you will look to avoid that emotional experience all day long, all night long too. And so we have kids who are escaping into books, and have a really hard time turning the books off. And that emotional experience of zoning out into books can be something that one might find to be really virtuous, right? I was a huge and avid book reader growing up, but I was definitely definitely escaping my emotional experiences through books as well growing up. And this is something, a sibling of a sensitive kid in a meltdown cycle like myself and my family. I remember literally walking the hallways and avoiding friendships and reading a book while walking the hallways in school, lost in the enjoyment of that. Obviously, that's a positive skill, being an avid reader. We want that for our children, right? And there needs to be a balance. Children need to be able to experience the real world and to navigate social skills. And you can't do that if your nose is in a book. So finding that balance of being able to do both, right? Read, quickly and often, which obviously helped me be successful in my career and still does, right? And it's not the only thing I do in my life. I have a family, I have friends, etc. And so now there's an opportunity for you to observe when your child is an avid book reader and that seems to be all they're interested in. I want you to observe, are they zoning in? Are they zoning out, tuning out their life in order to live in fantasy? and support your child in balancing that as well. And that needs to be happening away from the bedtime routine, so that your child can then build the skill to do it at bedtime. And so when we think about these, big picture strategies, it's important to understand that some of this can be very difficult to navigate as a parent of a sensitive kid when every day your kid is losing their mind, right? That takes a lot of stamina out of you, and it's difficult to endure consistently. And so I encourage you to reach out for support to solve this problem, because it is pretty pervasive and it's likely affecting the entire family. And so being able to turn this around, and we need to look at it from a family orientation rather than just trying to target your one kid who's struggling, because that just keeps the message going for your sensitive kid that they're broken, and they're not. Your highly sensitive child is missing skills. They are not broken. And so if you're ready to teach your child that, and to feel capable of being the one who is your child's teacher, because that's how highly sensitive kids learn, is through the relationship with the parent, then we're happy to support you with that. Go ahead and book a call with our team. Go to meganthompsoncoaching.com /talk. And you can have a conversation with our team related to your child, 8th grade and under. And if you have a teenager, meganthompsoncoaching.com /teen talk. And we'll have a conversation with your teen and you. And that'll help us support your teen and you in taking equal ownership of the family dynamic in your own respective parts. And that will be really important in supporting a teen's level of independence and what they're capable of within the family dynamic. And obviously on those phone calls, what we would do on that call is have a conversation about what you're struggling with, where you're challenged, what's not working, and then we'll talk about what you want to have working in your family relationships, where you think you can improve, and what is possible for your family once those challenges go away. And if what we do here at MTC and our systems and our programming works for a family like yours, we'll tell you how that works, and you get started right away. There's no need to wait. And then next, what you would need to do is discern, and obviously we would have the conversation, is if you weren't a fit, if what we do isn't appropriate for what your family needs, we would be sharing exactly how to take the next steps with a different professional, or with another skill set that you need to develop before we would be a match to work together, what have you. Obviously, that requires a conversation. I can't tell you that specific tips or tricks would be relevant for your particular family, because what we do isn't tippy and tricky. What we do is systematic here at MTC. So we don't just throw things at the wall to see what sticks. We follow a system, and we know what works, and we do that. And as a result, it's efficiently solving the problem. 8 weeks, 2 months, having dealt with this problem for the next, for the last 6, 7, 8 years, being able to turn that around consistently and pretty impactfully within 2 months, it requires a heavy amount of support from a professional team. And that's what we do here at MTC. So obviously, that's not a fit for everybody, and we're happy to figure out whether or not that's the case on one phone call. So again, looking forward to speaking with you, and have a wonderful day.